Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another installment of the Comics Pals Book Club, where every month we tackle a new book of your choosing. This month, we have the pleasure of reading Far Sector by N.K. Jemisin and Jamal Campbell, published under DC's Young Animal imprint. Rest in peace. Don't think that's still a thing.
It's not.
Um, as we go through, and if you like what you hear, take a look back at our catalog of other books. Last month we covered off on Black Sad, which is particularly fun, also hosted by me. I like that one a lot.
You forgot the one
Otherwise,
that you weren't on. Strange Adventures.
Yeah, that wasn't last month.
oh damn, that's
Marco
right.
goes away on vacation, just forgets a whole month.
Nothing happens when I'm not there, you know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, apparently, I don't keep up to date. But if you want to, you can do so by following us on all socials at the Comics Pals on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Tune in live for our weekly discussions on YouTube and Twitch, where we live stream our main show 10:15 a.m. EST every single Saturday, and Thursdays 6 p.m. EST for Pals Pulls, where we review the week's hottest comics. And lastly, if you want to further support the show and help guide some of these conversations, join the Patreon, where every month patrons get to vote on the next selection of book clubs, and where for as little as $3 a month, you get access to our weekly newsletters, an exclusive show palling around, as well as a first look into all of the new content that we're trying to produce. Kale, is that cheaper than anything you have?
That's cheaper than the whole physical copy of this book, Far Sector, which I got for £24.99.
Thank you very much, Kale.
It's cheaper than the US, actually, Cal.
Wait, what is that cheaper than?
Wasn't it $29.99 the physical copy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the exchange rate,
All right,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I'm not global and I'm dumb, so
Worldly.
not me.
I've gone global.
Oh,
Remember that podcast I did?
Oh yeah.
yeah, like a few episodes. I was on that one. Ooh, let's not talk about that. With the plugs for our show out of the way, to jump right in, the first thing that I want to talk about is actually N.K. Jemisin, because as I was doing some digging into the book and then also her as a writer, I didn't realize that she's actually, and for listeners who aren't familiar as well, she's actually a novelist. So this is her first foray into comics. She was a back-to-back Hugo Award winner for one of her series. And on Pals Pulls, we've talked about writers who come in from the book world who come to write comics. And most recently, I'm thinking of Walter Mosley, who did the latest Thing book back in 2022. So I'm curious as to how you guys felt. Did she understand the assignment? How does it feel like she did writing this series?
Well, she created a new character. She created what I assuming is a new world. She created an entirely new cast of supporting characters. So she basically got to completely avoid the DC sandbox by building her own sandbox within the DC sandbox.
She used an established superhero identity, made a new character within that, made a new god character within that,
right,
and only managed to reference two other characters.
Yeah. So I think, as a comics debut, first of all, I think the book's great. So as a comics debut, from a writing standpoint, she does a great job. It feels novelty, but I don't think that that's always a bad thing. And again, she has very little responsibility to understand DC lore, to understand DC's characters. So all that's not even in play. But I think as a debut, this is a very strong entry.
Yeah, I feel like it was wordy, but every word supported the comicness of it, the graphic nature of it. Like the images, did their part. You know, every bit felt very meticulously put together.
I think what helps too is the format of this 12 issues, and it was pretty much set to be 12 issues. Young Animal had a definitive structure to it. They were minis or maxis or whatever. And I think having a novelist go into a comic that is not ongoing, it's a set beginning, middle, end, helps them. And I think it really works here in that. And like, yeah, Sean, you said it feels novelly, but I think that's a good thing because it's a graphic novel, and it really is taking that kind of novel structure and making it a very visual thing. She has sci-fi chops. I just looked up her bibliography, and the New York Times called her the most celebrated science fiction and fantasy writer of her generation. It's good
The
sci-fi. I found this to be very fun sci-fi too. So.
the byline right above her name on the book, from the Hugo Award winning author of the Broken Earth trilogy, didn't do anything for you.
Broken now.
I I think I appreciated the because it did have a difference in the way that I think it was paced out. Um, and I felt like I appreciated the rhythm there because it did feel a bit different. One of the things that stuck out to me was some of the like romance flair that gets thrown in, and that to me is fun and something that I didn't realize until like I was sort of like confronted with it in the book that I tend to ascribe more so towards just novels in general as opposed to superhero comics. However far away this might be from something like that, but um, I think I appreciated that tone. And one of the things you guys brought up was or Sean, you brought up she created a new character, and I think that that's typically hard to do and then maintain relevance because technically, so our main character here, Sojourner Mullion, otherwise known as Joe, is now technically like full on established canon DC, and I think that's a testament to the job well done that she has here.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think she did do a very good job of creating a character that feels fully realized. And I think to do that without her having to encounter any established DC characters at all, not even to give her the rub. Like there was
Yep.
no desire at all to engage her with that stuff. I think that was very deliberate. And I think it was very smart. She's not, unfortunately, going to continue telling the stories of Joe, which is kind of sad. This is a one and done story, but yeah, the character lives on.
Do you guys think that hurts? That would hurt the legacy of this character because it wouldn't continue on under her like penship.
No, I think that this being such a strong start has already made her has already made Joe the character well established enough, you know, that she
Mm.
can successfully carry her own 12 issue maxi series or whatever and hold her own in other titles. I think, I think Jemison did exactly what she needed to.
Yeah, having finally read this, I feel like this is even a stronger character start than Jessica Cruz. Is that her name?
I think
Yeah,
so. Yeah.
Jessica
Power
Cruz.
Ring into Green Lantern. Because since her inception, she's kind of just been, batted back and forth between people without without a real definitive story outside of what Jeff Johns wrote. Um, so yeah, I thought this was great, and I like the character a lot. I understand, like having not read this before, everyone was like, "Oh, I wonder where Joe's gonna be." Like where's that character gonna be? And I'm like, I didn't think anyone read that. Like I didn't. I kind of had not even a bad opinion. I just had like a hard no opinion on the character. Um, and having read this, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I get the fan base around it. I get the fervor
Yeah.
wanting her to be around more. Yeah, I'm into it. Yeah.
And not only that, it actually the book won the Hugo Award for best graphic story comic. So, again, just like more credit onto her name for that. uh, getting into the actual details of the book, Joe, as a newly, I guess, uh, registered, no, enlisted lantern, is sent to this planet, or this remnant of a planet, the city enduring, to help solve a prospective murder, where we open on where it has happened, and we are now seeing a body. And I think that this does a really good job to just frame the story, because a lot of what gets end up getting discussed in this are a lot of political allegories and analogies. And so for us to start on the ground, and then in a few pages in, make it up to the top, we get to see where our struggles are, and we get to see where the, I guess, dichotomies are going to play out. One, on the ground amongst the people, and then two, in the, I guess, upper echelon of this council that manages the planet. um, I think politics are probably going to be some of the bulk of the conversation in this, and so just out of the gate, uh, I think the way that she incorporates things like class struggle, like poverty, drugs, black markets, police sentiment, like all of that to be established in this comic, I think is incredibly well done. And it doesn't appear that way from the start, to which I was immediately sucked in, again, to Jemison's credit.
Well, she's a novelist, so her job, novel over novel, is to establish generally complicated, you know, political, social concepts that can be wrapped up within one book. You know, so it's really not a surprise to me that she was able to do that so fast. Um, it feels like a world that we're stepping into that has a history, and a deep, complicated history at that. And I thought that was all brilliantly done and executed from the word go. It's also easy enough to understand. I think sometimes with sci-fi stories, these things can get so unruly and out of control. Whether or not the idea behind um, this social structure works for an individual reader, I think it's an effective enough vehicle at telling the story that Jemison's trying to tell.
I had a lot of trouble with this, grabbing onto the sci-fi jargon. The city eternal already feels like, you know, something that I'm gonna have to wrestle with.
I felt like some
You
prophet
know,
shit that I was just like, immediately, I'm like, yes, give me names, give me just words.
well, yeah. Then the names are, Kale of the green shirt, who put another sweater on to do a podcast today. Like that's a name. That's an example of somebody's name, and it's just like, what? And I had a lot of trouble keeping track of who was what and doing what. It didn't.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say it necessarily detracted from the story. The capital S story. But in terms of like plot, I really had to work to keep up with it.
I really like the world building in this personally. I thought, I mean, it's quite literally building a world. Um, but the whole keeping it with three alien races, and kind of describing each of them and interactions on this world, and like there's ones that started there. There's the plant people. There's like the digital people, and eventually we kind of see those people specifically in their own issues going forward. But yeah, I like that because it was sort of simple, keeping it to three, but also like it's not something we really ever get with Green Lantern. Green Lantern, we go to a planet and we see plenty of aliens, but like we don't really get the juice of their lore and what goes on in the world. It's like, all right, something bad's happening there. We go there. Oh no, the planet got destroyed. Like it's very surface level. Where this one, I felt like we actually got to be in this city and in the nitty gritty with the politics of it, who these races are and all that. And I was like, even as like a Green Lantern book, I was like, oh, that's refreshing.
Yeah, I feel like I often get lost in stuff like that, but I'm pretty sure I could tell you exactly what the social
Yeah.
political situation is in this book. And a lot of times I'm like, I'm barely holding on. I think Jemison has the knack that a novelist would have to have of being able to establish that and then keep reestablishing it. She's
Yeah.
really good at saying the same things over and over again, but framing them just so differently that it doesn't feel like your head's being cracked in. And it's also helping you understand stuff. And then the other thing is that Joe is a human. So to her, a lot of this is garbage. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't even make any sense. It's mumbo jumbo that she
Yeah.
makes fun of herself, which makes it almost gives us a pass. Like if you don't understand the
Yes.
names, if you don't understand any of that, don't worry, because our main character doesn't either. It's
Yeah.
irrelevant.
I think that
Well,
was such an effective tool to be
yeah.
able to be like I'm literally attached to the hip with you because I'm along for this ride in the same way that you're along for this ride, and I don't feel like I get like minus points for not understanding a thing.
Yeah, there were several moments where even that joke explained the concept that I was wrestling with. You know, they would have a joke and they would go, "Oh, like in your Earth culture, it would be that," and I go, oh, "Okay, right, I'm on board."
Yeah.
Kale, happy to be roasted. Um, the races here, just for context, are the Na, who are led up by Marth of the Sea by the wavering dark until the sun falls. I read that and I said, "Fuck yeah!"
It
The
sounds like a
At
Warcraft character that got like unlocked a couple titles.
the At, who are a race of digital AI that has gone sentient based off of their early version of the internet. Potentially one of me, the led up by the Blaze of Glory, and then the Ketopli, which is the aforementioned sort of plant people, led by Avrip Thorn of the Dry Season. Yeah, I think the way that the book plays these scenarios, it tells a story even insofar as the names, right? Because you lean back and some of them are based on, oh, this ship when they had first ultimately destroyed their planet while fighting the Cloud Cryptocracy, which was this other external force that came in to sort of try to take over these trio of races. Um, the uh, the way to enrich the world through that, I think, was such an effective tool. In the same way where one of the big other pieces in this world is that they have emotional blockers, and the way that Jemison explores that is when she notes that all of these people still use words that are expressive, that still show some kind of emotion attached to them. Like, oh, I'm feeling this, when really they could have just said, I think this, or it makes the most sense to do a thing. And it's very subtle. And I appreciated that because it just continues to add layers and layers to this world.
That was one of my only problems with the book was
Mm,
the emotion blocker thing. Um, I like the concept a lot, but I feel like Jemison was playing with it to where it felt a lot of times like it didn't actually matter because people were acting out of emotion and we saw it constantly. So I really didn't like the fact. And then there were other times where characters were acting so dispassionately that it's like, okay, that's how it should be. But by and large, people weren't acting without emotion. So
yeah.
I struggled with that a lot.
I thought it was the way I was reading it was that the characters that we see that act with emotion are the rich people because they don't care about they take that drug. So
Just
it would,
switch
the
off.
emotion blocker for me was more of a classist divide, really, as rather than an actual plot device, because our main character is full of emotions.
Nah, she says herself that there are people who are speaking, and she's like, that's them without emotion.
Right. Right.
So it's like, how can you say this character doesn't have emotion when you're literally commenting on their emotional reaction. It just didn't work for
Okay.
me.
Like there was still an expressiveness to them, regardless of the fact that they're supposed to not be. So there's like even at the in the first issue where the peace captain season Sis of the Cliffs by the Shrieking Ice. I wrote all these names down because I love it. Uh, she she has a very quick reaction, terse reaction to Blaze of Glory, almost calling them meat salads, and that's where that comment comes in of, oh, and this is them without emotion. Where when you see one of the other police captains, Teiji, who decides I'm going to just wipe out all of these protesters, there is no like that is cold, that is calculated, and there's such a disparity in between people who are supposedly all on the same page that I agreed to Sean's point. It took me out of the book because that felt like a logic or world inconsistency.
I wonder if it would have been better to write it as a dampener rather than
Yeah.
something that turns it off
Yeah.
completely. I think it
Oh,
leads to good beats, like when the wife says, "I can't even mourn my husband." I thought that was a
yeah,
good
that
beat.
was
You know,
strong.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
um,
I think the problem was it sort of felt like she picked and chose
sure.
when to put it in.
Mhm.
And there were a couple other things that I felt like Jemison did with that too that didn't really work for me.
Do you have an example?
Sure, the whole ring situation. So so her ring is supposed to be different from the other Green Lanterns in that it doesn't have as strong a charge because it doesn't operate off the central battery or whatever. So she has to actually take uh time to charge it, and that's supposed to be a big deal, but it never really comes up. Like they mention how often she has a low charge, but she's always able to do exactly what she needs to do.
Didn't it
See,
come
yeah.
to play towards the end when after she gets into the digital world and she gets out of it, she runs out of battery doing
But
that?
she still gets out of it. Like
Yeah, but
I
then
never
because of that, she has to go
felt
into like undercover now. She's not a Green Lantern anymore. She gets like that undercover gear, and then she winds up getting arrested.
she. I mean, she did all that anyway. Like it just didn't. It never
Sure.
felt
Okay.
to me like you know any of that mattered. It was just something to make her different, which I appreciate. It was just uh something that was kind of glossed over. I felt like.
There was a point. I don't remember what issue it was, but I feel like it was about halfway through, maybe even less than that, where there's a couple of characters who I can't remember um talking about her charge
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
what would happen when she had no more. So
Yep.
every time after that they referenced her charge, I'm like, oh shit, what's gonna happen to
Yeah.
her when it runs out? They're gonna get her. They're gonna get her. They're gonna
Yep.
get her.
Yep.
And then that never pays off. And by the end, when she's in this final confrontation, I'm like, oh my god, she gets on that ship, and her charge is supposed to be like, I felt like my iPhone, like when I'm outside,
Mm-hmm.
like my
Mm-hmm.
shit dies, what's gonna happen to me? But then
Yep.
she just, it's fine. Like there's
Yep.
literally no threat to her life at all as a result of her lack of charge, and that just didn't make any sense to me.
She packed
It's
her
like
power bank.
yeah. Yeah.
But it was supposed to add stakes to the things that she was doing because there's that risk of, oh, she's not going to come back after doing the right thing, and it never got to that point because there was even a moment where and that moment, Sean, happens in issue 4 with during the protests where
Yeah.
the two protesters are coming. You got the two police guys talking,
Yeah.
but there's a moment where right after she comes out of the world where she's on like 18% battery and it's supposed to last her 6 minutes, but then it's going to take 5 days or something to charge. And then
Yeah.
only a few, like two, maybe 2 issues later, she's at 25% and she can go and do a thing. And that felt also inconsistent because it felt like, again, Jemison was sort of scaling it as needed to add some sort of um, to add some sort of lofty stake. Like there's a risk here when really there isn't.
And I thought it was unnecessary because to me, the question wasn't really whether like I guess that was established so early that her her ability to overcome this situation and survive it was in my mind because they referenced it. But from the jump of the story, it's not really about her ability to survive this. It's about her ability to solve this problem. So
Yeah.
I don't think that the book even needed to try to establish a risk that's related to her lantern ring because A, that's artificial and clearly arbitrary. But B, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in, can she do this? Can she survive this? Or not,
Mhm.
can she survive this? Can she solve this? And that was the intrigue.
And even the regular Lantern books don't deal with that anymore. Like,
Yeah.
that concept, of having to recharge the battery is so, it's great for an issue one, get your lantern to say the oath or whatever and show the battery. That's it, really.
It's
Like,
not heat.
If you're gonna
And
introduce it, pay it off. That's like a you know,
it's Chekhov's gun.
it's yeah. It's just the gun never showed up again in this. So.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the gun's just on the boy. There's a shiny gun on the wall. That's a lot of ammo right next to it. I'd sure hate if somebody picked it up and did something with it.
uh, keeping on Joe, how does she fit the mold of a lantern for you? Like, is she worthy of this? Is she?
Oh hell yeah.
is Guy Gardner worthy?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Well,
Gnort.
She's more worthy than Hal Jordan. Are you kidding me? Like,
Is this our first actual Green Lantern space cop that was an actual cop? Was Guy a cop? Something tells me
no.
no.
He was, geez.
Maybe he just looks like a cop. That's why I'm
I
thinking.
think he was a football player, I think.
Yeah, that
no
tracks.
way.
That
Yeah.
tracks.
Well, not gonna search it.
Because John, Joe, and Hal were all in various military. Kyle's an artist.
Hmm.
Great radio, guys.
I love the fact that I agree,
Oh.
Kill. I love the fact that they made her all those things, a cop and someone who was in the military. Because we haven't mentioned it yet, but Joe is black. Joe's a black woman. And that is, I think, critical to, her worldview. It's critical to where she comes from, but also critical is the almost hypocrisy at play
Yeah.
of her criticism of some of the ways in which this culture operates juxtaposed with the things that she's been a part of in her life, especially with her upbringing. You're a black woman from Brooklyn and then you go on to become a cop. Okay, then
And I was like, okay, wait. Eric Garner would have had to have happened before she was a cop, right? Like, surely.
Mm,
Anyway.
but then you're also in the military. You're also from. So I thought that was interesting. I liked it a lot that Jemison could have played it super safe and said, "Oh, she's a sociologist. She's a really
Yeah.
smart college. Like, I'm sure all that's true too. Like, she's real smart, but like she went a direction that's cross to the way this character seems like she would be, and I thought that was really really smart.
I like how quickly they establish her backstory too. It's just like a series of pages. Like it's very specific. It's she was in 9/11 essentially as a kid on the fallout of it. Forced her to, it drove her to, join the military instead of going to Princeton, which she got her, an acceptance letter to, which then drove her into the police academy. Then during the Black Lives Matter movement, it's a very specific timeline that I think is really good, honestly, and more common than you'd expect.
Well, and I really think Jemison does a great job playing with it too. Using her guilt and the hypocrisy of it all to fuel the way she's thinking about this society and this, these crimes. um a lot of the book is her wrestling with herself and the way she feels, and trying to figure out how to do it right, as though this is her second chance.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And um the scene where we see like the cop, her partner, um hitting someone,
Yeah.
a black man with a gun, and she's kind of standing there watching it. They show that panel twice, and the first
Yeah.
time I didn't connect that was her, and I don't know if that's just I wasn't paying enough attention, but I didn't. The second time they show it is in that montage of her life history, and I was like, oh shit, that's crazy. um and it reminded me, like, I know a real person who had that exact same experience,
Mm.
where he actually witnessed the death of a kid, the shooting of a kid, um at the hands of his partner. And he didn't rat his partner out, like he didn't tell the police the context of what he had witnessed, but he left the force over it. And he never, like, he told me these things many years ago. He never like got over the fact that he didn't stop it, that like he didn't have the strength of will to stop that in the moment. And I always thought, like, that story, he told me that so long ago, that always stuck with me. So when
Yeah.
I saw that here, I was like, wow, holy shit. And tack on the fact that she's a black woman who just watched the abuse of a black man. And she's a cop. She's on the side of quote unquote good. And she's witnessing this horror and not stopping it.
And she ends up dealing with the ramifications of that, right? Like she ends up being the one punished. And I think that then plays into when she's in the middle of the crowd and she sees like the abuse happening, and she's wrestling with and trying to understand why why that approach would be taken when uh, and she expounds on all of this idea on like her version of justice and what that looks like, not only in that scene but then towards the end of the book as well, when they're wrapping everything up. It's like, turning onto your own people and the people that you're supposed to protect is inherently wrong, emotional or not. It's logic in it's logical to want the best for a people, regardless of whether or not you agree or disagree with them. And following orders is not enough of an excuse. Never is it enough of an excuse.
Hmm. I I don't know. I felt like I actually interpreted it another way, I guess. I felt like the fact that the people allegedly didn't have emotion made it so that the choice they were making to execute these people was a dispassionate, purely logical decision of, hey, these people are a problem and this is getting out of hand, and we can keep the peace better by getting rid of them and not dealing with this. And it was her emotion and her passionate reaction to what she perceived as injustice to say, wait, this is not okay. We can't do this. And her emotion allowed her to intervene in a way that solved or saved people from having to deal with that.
As like being that introduction of like a sympathy for a fellow person.
And an empathy. Yeah. She wasn't going to stand in the way or stand, aside and allow this kind of thing to happen again.
Hmm.
I also think that this sort of goes back to what we were saying about sort of the way she wrote some of these emotionless characters. It didn't even necessarily click for me that that police captain was um emotionless or whatever. I thought he was just kind of your generic police character who's written flatly because you're never going to see him again.
Right. That's funny.
So it didn't even click.
Hmm. I think that situation could have been presented better to establish that very fact that, like, hey, this is a clear-cut situation to us. There's no reason for us not to do this. And Joe's emotion and passionate response to this prevents them from doing that. That's how I read it, but I don't think that they did such a great, or she did such a great job of making that clear, if that
Yeah.
was the case.
One of the other things that gets introduced here is Joe's sexuality. And she has a relationship with a previous relationship with the peace captain, and then throughout, in a portion of this book, with Marth, the leader of the Na. And I appreciated how that gets expressed here as well. It's subtle. It's not necessarily like offhand, but it's done in a really simple way where she's just allowed to exist without it having to be a larger part of her character. And whereas it's more pertinent her history with the police, or with her history with in the military, that drives and adds to the story, whereas this is an aspect of her to just develop her character more.
I was so glad there was no like backstory of her sexual history or sexuality. Like let
Yeah.
it be what it is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't serve the story. It's a fact about her that's fine and cool, and I have no problem with it. But we don't need I think it helps more not to address it, to just let it be.
Yeah.
When you live in a world full of different aliens, there's no point in letting a gender binary bother you.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
It doesn't
mean, they're
yeah.
aliens, so
But
So
even
is
like
it
even when she's on Earth, she makes that offhand note to the Guardian when the Guardian's in, the disguise, like, oh,
yeah, that's
I don't have
right.
the
Yeah,
consent
that's
for
right.
this. So they kind of seed it throughout that, but also like sci-fi, and like being straight in sci-fi makes no sense. Person.
I mean,
as
being what you are is what it is.
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
As some of the other things that get discussed here, poverty within the at for example, and they're struggling with memes. I thought that was an interesting way to look at one, the lack of emotion, where creativity is drawn from that emotion. And I thought that was an interesting concept to then turn into and commoditize, where I feel like we do that now in our own world, where memes are valuable. People who create those things and have far reach are commoditized, and uh, to make it where it is almost like sustenance for them is a step further and beyond that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tyler.
I also like that because they're birthed from the internet. It makes sense that this is essentially their lifeblood. It's an extension because memes are a way of representing emotion and creativity. I think there's a study that like GIFs and memes are more emotive than words in getting emotions across. There was like a study about that. So like this being the natural trajectory of that, once an actual civilization is born from the internet, it makes sense. And also they made a Warcraft reference to Leroy Jenkins, so I was all about that. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's some good meme right there. That was a tasty
yeah.
meme for me. I get it.
It helped me when I thought about this from the like NFT crypto standpoint of like, oh, they're buying NFTs, and this is all like a cryptocurrency scam that this entire culture is run off of.
Man,
And
you're ahead of the curve.
it did feel like our real life in a lot of ways. If you think about the idea that, people use memes and the things that are creatively made with, human creativity and ingenuity, we consume those things as means of escape from our problems in life. And these people are using these emotional blockers essentially to do the same thing. They can't control themselves. It's a major problem. Instead of confronting why that lack of control is the thing, and how they can be better as people, they just say, let's shut this down. And I think, when you look at our real life, we're avoiding that. We're avoiding these deeper issues and conversations constantly. And we're replacing that with memes.
Easy, consumable, short for our ever shrinking attention spans.
Yeah.
Um, did these things like the class struggles, the conversations on um, the drugs in general for switch off, and like, did this help make the world feel a bit realer for you, or was that still because of the context that it was in? Did it still separate that and make it feel like sci-fi?
Felt real to me. In the sense that I was in on it, like I thought that, everything about this world felt realized, and it felt like it had history that was there before we got there, before Joe got there. I had no issues with any of that.
Lived in.
I gotta say, to kind of piggyback off that lived in feeling, the architecture work by Jamal Campbell is insane in this.
Hmm.
Just the way he designs this world. There's some in the trade. There's some back matter where you can see like some of his processing for the original designs for this. It's gorgeous, honestly. It's alien, but still like, all right, I get it, which is like perfect science fiction.
Unrelated to the art, I was really frustrated because they have the trade for this on DC Unlimited. Oh, you had the series series, but you have to have Ultra
No,
in
I didn't,
order. Oh, so why did you not? Well, beside the point.
because I saw it. I know
Oh,
what you're
okay.
talking about.
They have the Ultra. You're only able to access it if you have Ultra. You have to pay, instead of the 80 that I have for the subscription for the year, you have to have the upgraded version to get access to the trade that has additional back matter and all this stuff versus just having access to it. I can only read this in individual issue format. And I was pissed.
What's the equivalent in physical? Like,
Like
It,
what
it
is
would it would be like walking into the bookstore and then handing you the 12 issues and being like, "Oh, you can't buy the trade because you have to pay $100 for it." Sorry.
Genuinely, genuinely, that might be the single dumbest thing I have ever heard as it relates to digital comics. I can't believe what you just told me.
it was stupid,
I can
dude.
totally believe it. There's a plus for everything now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And like even some simple stuff like Watchmen,
And it's bringing down
Watchmen's
the
not on
internet.
there?
I don't think so, not anymore.
Of
Well,
course, people pirate comics. What the hell else are you going to do? DC won't let you read the damn trade digitally. You have to read the single issues digitally. What?
yep.
And this app ain't that great.
And according to our Discord, they charge you multiple times by accident too.
Oh,
So
that's right.
yeah.
By
But
accident,
Yeah.
quote unquote.
but back on the art, the I'm not familiar with Jamal's other stuff, and for me, I think the style also worked really well. Just clean lines, clean
Mm.
inks, um, and what really sold me on this was how bustling everything felt. The panels are full to the brim. The worlds that are showcased here are expansive, and there's so much in there to want to look like you can explore. And I thought that was a really cool way to visually represent how futuristic and also just how many people live here, because they make reference to 20 billion people, 18 billion people, all this, but then to represent that in within panels, I thought was brilliant work to make you feel like you're cramped.
This book is stunning. The
Yeah.
Jamal Campbell art is so good. His design for Joe feels iconic to me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can see her on those Alex Ross paintings. I can
Yeah.
see her there. Like, when you first open the book, and it's raining, so she has her like raincoat on and stuff like that, and those big ass cool glasses that she wears that are not real because she's a Green Lantern. Like, that's just sick as hell.
That's my one complaint with her costume. I really hate that visor.
Oh,
What?
I love it.
You didn't
It's
like
so
that?
good.
No, I really don't.
That's some Morpheus ass shit, man. They're not
Yeah.
even on her face for real.
Yo,
I
Sean,
I
love it.
like it.
You love the Matrix references in this book, didn't you?
Dude, the Matrix is my favorite thing.
I
So
know.
yes,
Yeah.
issue 2 where she's Morpheus,
Morpheus,
bro.
yeah.
Oh my god, with
And
the
later
green
on,
nails,
her and
please.
Iconhez are Neo and Trinity. Yeah,
Yeah, man. Oh, so good.
I
Uh,
love the design of this costume.
yeah, other
It
than
is
the visor, I love
it
everything else
feels
about the costume.
functional. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it feels like I can put this on rather than like Hal's just like, oh, it just comes on him. That poor turn of phrase, but like it just appears on him. It's a better way of saying it, but yeah.
I thought the intros where she would randomly pull from, or they would
Yeah.
randomly pull from different medium was really, really interesting.
The recaps.
Within the
Yeah.
recaps, like
yeah,
you'd have like more romance story stuff, fantasy stuff, the Matrix.
Alien was referenced here with the mech. Yeah.
Those
Mm.
illusions I thought worked really, really well, and were homages to just other sci-fi books that drew me further in. I'm like, oh, you guys are pulling from good shit.
And
And
those are
also,
things. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and also like DC does not have recap pages, so like this is different for DC to do this as well. And rather than it just being the traditional Marvel recap page, which is just text, this kind of just recaps you into the feeling of it rather than the actual story of what's going on. Yeah, I thought they were really fun, honestly.
And it's something you can't do in novels. So I love the
Yeah.
fact that Jemison found ways to take the comic book format and do meaningfully different things with it that she couldn't do if this was just a novel. That wouldn't come across. Oh, this is the Matrix, right? Like you wouldn't be able to visually tell that. So I thought that was really smart. And just in general, Jamal Campbell for me, with this 12-issue series, I don't remember what else was coming out in 2019 or whatever, but damn if this isn't one of the better looking books of that year. Like it has to be. This is just so
yeah.
damn good.
Yeah. Did coloring too.
Yeah.
And the coloring, I wanted to bring up the coloring because the coloring is insane. So the thing that jumps out to me, and it could just be because it's color, but when you think of a Green Lantern book, you can't help but think of the spectrum and how different colors mean different emotions on the emotional spectrum. In this, throughout it, there are moments when like Joe gets angry and it's colored with red lighting. There's that one scene where she sees like the people in that like body farm or whatever, and it's all red and yellow, so it's like rage and fear. It's a great way to kind of bring in that idea of the emotional spectrum of color without bringing in that the friggin' Power Rangers of the DC universe. And then looking in the back matter, yeah, I think there was a page where he even drew Joe in different lighting for all the spectrum colors too. So I was like, all right, maybe I wasn't crazy. I think this was purposeful. I thought it was great. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention, sorry, was that Joe looks black. And a lot of times, and it helps that, writer, artist, both black, but a lot of times black characters in comic books don't actually look black. Look at Storm over the last, I don't know, however long, especially the House and Powers era.
Even look at
creation.
some of these variant covers in the back of the trade.
Yeah, like, and all the characters that like there's a lot of blackness in this book, despite them being aliens. And it's what I like to call incidental blackness, where they're not, it doesn't matter that they're black, they just are. And to me, that's the most effective form of quote unquote diversity, where the characters just are what they are. And I really, really appreciated that we got that here, and a lot of it, and it wasn't a factor of the story.
What was your guys' favorite, I guess, part of this world? What was it that stuck out to you or stuck with you that persisted?
From the world?
Are you asking for like my favorite part of the book?
Sure.
Honestly, I like when they go into that whole AT-AT world. That's them getting into the Matrix. And then they quite literally make that homage. I thought that was a really fun thing, and her trying to kind of ground herself in another new world within her world. Was like a good display of Joe's willpower through it all. Without even, I don't think willpower is even brought up as a term in this book at all.
Like
which is a Green Lantern book, but it is showed without explicitly saying it. I thought that whole issue was probably one of my favorite ones. Gorgeous too.
I also really liked how, she's now been on at least two physical worlds, right? When you say that word, right, it's so, especially for us, obviously we're humans, the writers of this book, human. When you say the
Speak for yourself.
word world, you think about Earth because that's where we're at. But like, what is a world? She's able to orient herself in this digital space because she interprets it as just another world. A world is where people live, and the digital world is a world just like Earth. It's just not physical. And I like how she was able to make that tweak in her brain, which allowed her to accept the whole thing. That was pretty smart.
It goes in her head from like capital W to lowercase w, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's real smart.
Kale?
Um,
You can say it's the mech, it's fine.
I I don't think I have a favorite part. Like I just like the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I like the concept of her ring, I think the most, despite what I said of sort of the the misexecution. Because I think that sets her apart, and I think that's really, really, really interesting. But overall, I think it's just like her and the book. This is a noir story that if you take parts out of it, it doesn't work.
Do we know she's showing up soon in the next Green Lantern book coming out, right? As we record this.
Well, she
The
was in Infinite Frontier and all that stuff, so she's still like gonna be like in the Dawn of DC stuff.
Yeah, I feel like
Jeremy
they
Adams Green Lantern.
yeah, Jeremy Adams Green Lantern.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the case.
Okay, that's good. I like that she's getting some staying power too. Well
Or
deserved.
I'm sorry, is Jeremy Adams writing the Hal focused one?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's writing the Hal focused one. But I think your point stands that she is featuring in the other Green Lantern book that
Mm.
has more characters.
And like think about the other, young animal books that were there. They had Doom Patrol, but like they were already pre-existing, but like Mother Panic, Shade the Changing Girl, like none of those really had the staying power that Joe's been having. So good to see.
They need to do more with her. 2019 was too long ago.
Sure.
And I think it helps that she's attached to something bigger.
Right.
Whereas like Shade, not so much, and Mother Panic, I don't know what that is. You have Doom Patrol, like you said, that's established. You can slot Joe in because the book was good and popular, and she's attached, so it's not like it's not a hard sell.
Yeah.
As we wrap, would you guys, are there any other call outs you guys want to chat through? Otherwise, would you recommend this book? And to who?
Of all the books we've done on the book club, I think this is one of the most accessible. And obviously, I mean, that's gonna be one of the strengths of an NK Jemisin. You want a book that's gonna be telling a story in 12 issues that feels complete and accessible. You get someone like Jemisin because she's a novelist of tremendous skill and success who knows how to take build a YA audience in one book. That's what you have to be able to do. And she's good at it. And we see that novelists who are just talented writers have been able to make a very successful transition. Like there's probably a reason why Tom King's books are all 12 issue series. You know what I'm saying? And so she does that tremendously well. I would recommend this book to pretty much anybody, but someone specifically who has a taste for sci-fi stories. I have certain friends in my life who are Black, who like comics, but without necessarily speaking it, don't feel served by the typical comic book. So I think this would be for them.
Yeah, I'm with Sean on this. I think this is a good. If they like sci-fi, this is a good recommendation. Yeah, or even if someone was like, "Hey, I want to read DC comics, but I don't know where to go," this is fine. Like, sure, it doesn't really, bring them into the DC universe, but it's a good one and done comic, as a trade.
Yeah.
Good stuff. With that, thank you all for joining us on another book club. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to help guide further conversations with our book clubs, join the Patreon where you get a vote every month. Otherwise, let us know how you liked this book, whether or not you would recommend it to somebody. If you picked it up off of one of our recommendations, shoot us an email at thecomicspals@gmail.com. Leave us a comment anywhere that you're watching this: YouTube, Twitch, well, not Twitch, if you're tuning live for sure. Instagram, Twitter, whatever it might be, your form of reaching us, and let us know how you liked it. Thank you again, and until next month.